Okay, today we're talking about multiplication of integers. Now, multiplication can be written three different ways. You have so far learned, if you weren't in Excel especially, use the X for multiplication. That's not the only way to do it. In fact, this way is going away very, very, very soon. So soon this will be going away. We'll be either using this dot. Now, when you write the dot, make sure you make it a little darker and not on line. It's got to be between the two terms. And more likely we'll be using, or more commonly, we'll be using the parentheses. Now, when you have a number attached to a parentheses with no operation between them, this means multiplication. So I'm saying 4 sets of whatever inside those parentheses. So this is saying 4 sets of 7, 4 sets of 7, and then 4 sets of whatever's in here, which just happens to be 7. All right, that's all if they're positive numbers. Now let's look at some examples of what happens when we start throwing integers in the mix. Here's our positive example. 4 times 8 is 32. Great. If I have a negative 4 and I have a negative 8, I wind up with, again, the same exact answer. So positive and a positive gets me a positive. A negative times a negative also gets me a negative. Now, in real life, 2 wrongs don't make a right. 2 bad things don't make a good thing. But in math, 2 negatives do make a positive. Now, in these examples, we have 4 times a negative 8. Now, I put this here even though I didn't have to. I could have just written this as 4 times negative 8. And I could have written this one also as negative 4 times 8. These two are equivalent, and these two are equivalent. But watch what happens here. Positive 4 and a negative 8, I want it with a negative 32. The numbers don't do anything different. They're not doing anything special. It's the signs you have to be careful of. If I have a negative 4 and I multiply it by a positive 8, I want it with a negative 32. So very simply, the rules are a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative. These all equal a positive. So if the signs are the same, it becomes a positive. If the signs are different, so a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive, the sign will be a negative. Now we're going to do a few examples. Now these all have 3 terms because I want to make sure that we both do order of operations and pay attention to the signs. So here we go. First things first, I want to do the negative 6 times the negative 3. I have a negative times a negative, which will get me a positive, and then 6 times 3 is 18. All right, 18 times the negative 8. Now, 18 times negative 8. Now, I'm going to do this over the side so I don't make a calculation error. A lot of times when people think they can do the answer in their head, that's where silly mistakes happen. 18 times 8, we get a 4. We carry the 6. 8 times 1 is 8 plus 6. Gets me 144. So my answer will be now, since I have a positive and negative, my number is 144, but my answer will have to be a negative. And yes, by the way, folks, you are more than welcome and expected to make sure, even something you could probably do in your head, make sure you write it out. All right, you notice how 6 times 3, that's a fact, we don't have to worry about it. But I probably could have done that in my head. I could have done 20 times 8 is 160. And then 2 times 8 is 16. 160 minus 16 would be 144. I could have done it that way, but I wanted to be sure that I was precise in my answer. Now the next one. We have 9 times negative 3. This gets me a negative number because positive times a negative is a negative. 9 times 3 gets me negative 27. We're multiplying it by, in this case, a positive 4. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go over here to make sure. First off, my answer will be negative, so I'm going to write that in first. positive times a negative gets me a negative. And then over here, 27 times 4, just to make sure I don't make a mistake. This gets me an 8. This gets me a 2. 2 times 4 is 10. Plus 2 is 108. So my answer will be negative 108. Now I want you to notice, I didn't write my signs in my scratch work. I don't have to. Since I've already written the sign here, I don't have to do it here. But be careful, because sometimes if you leave it off, you will leave it off in your answer. So I even sometimes tell people, if they keep doing that, to put this here and then just to put this someplace where your answer is going to be here. So you can write it as you're writing it vertically. It's not against the rules. If it helps you, use it. But I like to make sure I write it right where I'm going to write the answer anyway. And just to make sure, I'm going to circle this as my final answer and circle this as my final answer. So I should make sure that whoever's looking at my paper knows that's the answer I meant. All right, now the last one we're going to do today does have order of operations. We actually threw in some subtraction here. My little gift to you to kind of extend this a little bit. So I'm going to do this in two pieces. I have a negative 7 and a negative 6. A negative times a negative is a positive. I'm not going to write the positive. I don't need to. 7 times 6 is 42. Now on this side here, I have a negative 9 and a 4. So my answer is going to be a negative, because negative times a positive. Negative and positive gets me a negative. 9 times 4 is 36. But I still have to bring down the subtraction. Now, I'm going to give you a huge warning. This is a huge error alert. Error alert. Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. I have seen so many times that people will write this here and then not bring down that minus number. That minus operation. So sometimes I tell people to do this and even to do that. So you know that it came from your first and second part. And then you bring down the subtraction. Now again, these parentheses are just to separate your operation from your integer. Now we'd have to do keep at opposite. This will stay the same. So 42, I'm going to leave off the parentheses because I don't need them right now. I'm then going to change this to addition. And then I'm going to change this from a negative. I want to do the opposite of negative 36, which is positive 36. And then 36 and 42 gets me an answer of 78. So again, keep that order of operations in mind. If you want to color code this at home, you can do this as a highlighter. You can do this as colored pencils. I'm using pen, even though I told everyone here, please don't use pen when you're doing your work. But at the same time, I don't have any colored pencils with me, and this is the next best thing. So again, negative times a negative or a positive times a positive, if they have the same sign for the two terms, absolutely, you keep them making both positive. If you have two different signs, a negative and a positive or a positive and negative, your answer will be negative. All right, have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow for division.